بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, including the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As we greet you on the 26th day of the month of Jumadi al-Akhirah here from Putrajaya in Malaysia with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And our topic is entitled An Islamic Eschatological Explanation of Israel's Master Plan. And I want to begin by reminding you that by Allah's kindness and grace, I was able to write Jerusalem in the Quran some 20-something years ago. And in that book, we did explain Israel's master plan. And we turn to a verse of the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke with language which has to be interpreted. When He said in Surah Al-Mursalat, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ انطلقوا إلى ظل ذي ثلاث شعب. Let history now proceed to a shadow which will be comprised of three parts. That has to be interpreted. And we offered an interpretation 25 years ago that the Quran is referring to a messianic interpretation of history. That history is determined by the movement of the subject of the Messiah. And that because Allah sent the Messiah and they rejected Him, and then they boasted of how they had crucified Him. And so they're still waiting for the Messiah to come because they rejected Him. And I'm referring to a people the Quran refers to as Jews. And I am not afraid to call them Jews. I do not do so in any disparaging way. No. They rejected the Messiah. And they boasted of how they crucified Him. And so Allah created an evil being and programmed that evil being to impersonate the Messiah. They, the Christians, know him as the Antichrist, and we know him as Dajjal, the false Messiah. And I said that because Dajjal, the false Messiah, has to impersonate the true Messiah, and therefore to declare from Jerusalem that he is the Messiah while ruling the world, which is our topic today, ruling the world, that he has three stages. And these three stages impact on political history. And these three stages impact on economic history. And these three stages impact on monetary history. So scholars of Islam, you got homework to do. And I said that in political history, the first stage witnessed the emergence of Pax Britannica. That Pax Britannica is the first stage of the Antichrist in his effort to rule the world from Jerusalem. If you have another explanation for Pax Britannica, I'd love to hear it, because I am a student of international affairs. And I said that the second stage was Pax Americana. And we will see with Pax Americana the same mysterious obsession with the Holy Land and with Israel. And we said that there will be a third and last stage of the three stages. And 25 years ago we said the last of the three stages will be a Pax Judaica, when the state of Israel will attempt to replace the United States of America as the third and last ruling state in the world. When the three stages of the shadow have expired, then the Antichrist will appear in human form. And he will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am the Messiah. But he would not be the Messiah. He would be the false Messiah. And he would have taken the Jews for a ride. And it will be the last ride on which they'll ever go. Because once the false Messiah has completed his mission, then Allah will send the Imam al-Mahdi. And after the Imam has come, then the true Messiah will return. And there is abundant evidence in the Quran that Nabi Isa alayhi salam will return. We know, therefore, that Israel's master plan is to rule the world. But that's not news for you. That's news for the sheep and the cattle. Because all they do is to eat their roti canai and go to sleep. But not you. You already know. Malaysia already know. I don't know what the government of Malaysia, but the Malaysian people already know that Israel's master plan is to rule the world from Jerusalem. And 25 years ago, that may have looked impossible. But 25 years later, Israel is ignoring everybody. Israel is ignoring the whole world. Israel is ignoring the Security Council of the United Nations. And Israel is doing whatever Israel has to do to become the next ruling state in the world. Good. The next stage is, if Israel is to become the ruling state in the world, what is the definition of a ruling state? Like Britain and the United States of America. Answer. A ruling state is not a state which controls every inch of downtown Chicago or Johor Bahru. A ruling state is a state which cannot be threatened or rivaled. by any other state or any combination of other states. That's a ruling state. So in order for Israel to become a ruling state, the first stage is that Israel has to take control of her immediate environment. I call it the strategic environment. So there must be no government, no state in this environment in which Israel is located, which is resisting Israel. Any state which resists Israel must be destroyed, so that all those who remain around Israel will be in a state of submission to Israel. Saudi Arabia, I used to say 25 years ago, was Israel's sister, but I was wrong. 25 years ago, Saudi Arabia and Israel were only cousins. Now they are sisters. And Jordan is like that, a state of submission to Israel. And so to all the other Arab states. They're all in submission to Israel. But Saddam Hussein in Iraq was not. He was showing resistance. And Gaddafi in Libya was not. He was showing resistance. And Assad in Syria was not. Don't bother about the sheep and cattle who are bleating now. The fact is that Assad in Syria was not in submission to Israel. I don't have time for fools. Assad was not in submission to Israel. And Israel, therefore, went about using deception again. Israel, first of all, got rid of Gaddafi, using Britain and using France and using their friend and ally, Erdogan, in Turkey. And they got rid of Gaddafi. Israel got rid of Saddam Hussein. Now, Libya is in shambles. And this is Israel's victory. Are you following me? The same thing with Iraq. And they use Bush. And they use the alliance of puppy dogs. And they use something called Desert Storm. And now Saddam Hussein is history. And Iraq is in no position to offer any resistance to Israel. And now finally they've done the same thing with, they call themselves Hamas. I call them the Islamic resistance, but like Afghanistan, they know how to fight. But like Afghanistan, they don't have knowledge in their head. So you can take them sometimes for a ride. So they destroyed Hamas. That's Israel's victory. And then they proceeded to destroy Hezbollah. That's Israel's victory. And now Israel is boasting that we have changed the government of Syria. Let me repeat that. Israel is now boasting, we have changed the government of Syria. So Israel's puppy dogs are the ones who waged the bogus jihad against Assad and the Syrian government to change that government. So they wage Israel's war, for Israel, the way Pakistan used to wage America's war for America. And now the United States of America is boasting. Biden, before he says goodbye, is boasting, we have changed the Syrian government. And so there is no credibility in those who wage their bogus jihad against Syria's government. Syria today is now in submission to Israel. And all that now remains is the Houthi in Yemen and Iraq. And now Israel would be having success in getting the entire environment to be in submission to Israel, which is on the way to becoming the ruling state. Now, I don't have time to proceed more with this because I want to go to define what kind of state that Israel wants to create. It will be a state like unto the holy state of Israel created by Solomon, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, and David, Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, otherwise known as a holy state. But we in Islam, we have a different name for the holy state. We call it the Khilafah state. So Israel wants to establish a Khilafah state, meaning a holy state. That's what they did in Constantinople. The Christians created a holy Byzantine Empire. So what is a holy state? Or what is a Khilafah state? That is the question. And the Jew will answer that a holy state is a replica of the state created by David and Solomon, Nabi Dawood and Nabi Sulaiman. Holy Israel. And holy Israel was not a secular state. So Israel's master plan is not only to rule the world, but more than that, to establish a ruling state which will be not a secular state, but a holy state. And therefore Israel will have a king. Israel will have a ruler who will be a king. What kind of state would it be? It will be a state in which the Torah, the scripture, would be the basis of knowledge for how the state is constituted. They will then establish that holy state in accordance with the sacred law which has come from Nabi Musa alayhi salam, the prophet Moses. I do not have that scholarship of the Jewish scriptures to be able to define what kind of state it will be and what kind of temple will be established when the Masjid al-Aqsa is destroyed, because you cannot have a holy state of Israel without a temple. And you cannot have the temple while there is Masjid al-Aqsa. So a convenient earthquake will have to occur, which will demolish the masjid. And then they will go about to build the temple. Now then, but I can go to the Quran to define a holy state or a Khilafah state, and I'm worried that Dr. Olsley is not here. I wanted him to be here. The way to define a holy state, to explain Israel's master plan, is to go to the Quran and to that part when Allah spoke to the angels and said, I'm going to place on earth one who will be my Khalifa, meaning one who will rule in my name. One who will be a Khalifa, so therefore one who will rule in my name. Britain and the Western world used to have this. They call it the divine rights of kings, that kings rule on God's behalf. This was political theory in Christendom. So the angels then said, are you going to place on earth one who is going to shed blood and create fitna? Then Allah created Adam alayhi salam. And He sent him on earth with mankind to live on earth. So when will someone rule on earth on Allah's behalf? That's the question. Mankind is now on earth. When will a ruling state emerge? We have no evidence of such an event until the time of David, Nabi Dawood alayhi salam. For the first time in human history, a holy state is now established in Jerusalem. And the pivotally important verse of the Quran is located, I believe, in Surah As-Sad, where Allah speaks to David, Nabi Dawood alayhi salam. And this is what he said. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Ya Dawood, O David, إنا جعلناك خليفة في الأرض. We hereby appoint you to rule on earth in our name. So he is Khalifa. And now a Khilafah state is established, or a ruling state. I am explaining this for the benefit of the President of Russia, so that these words might reach him. Because no one taught the Quran to them. 600 years of Ottoman Empire, they never taught the Quran. We are teaching the Quran now to the Russian people, and they are listening respectfully to it. O David, Ya Dawood, I hereby appoint you to rule on earth in my name. Inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. And so a holy state or a Khilafah state comes into being for the first time in history. And it comes to the seed or the family or the house of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it is going to be a great state, says the Quran. فَحْكُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِالْحَقِّ. The foundation of a holy state, the foundation of a Khilafah state, the definition of a Khilafah state or a holy state is located in these few words. that rule and law and governance in this state must be based on truth, al-haq. That is the holy state. Truth is not something secular, not something which changes with every passing cloud. Truth is something which is absolute and universal. And truth is the word of the one God. And truth came down with every revelation. And truth came down for the last time in the Quran, absolute truth. So, when they argued, as they did, and Osli knows this subject better than me, they argued when they created modern Western civilization, and they controlled the world, and they brought a new political system to mankind, that we have to change the definition of a state. And a state can no longer be a holy state. Religion and politics must be separated from each other forever and forever. And now, truth has nothing to do with politics. Scripture has nothing to do with politics. And that is why Imran cannot lecture in any masjid. They shut the doors of the masjid on me, but that's another subject. You now need a constitution. And if you don't have a constitution, you are not a state. And a constitution doesn't come from God. The people are now in charge, and God is no longer in charge. I was so happy yesterday when Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, said, like he never spoke before, but yesterday he said it. He said, I believe in God, and God is with us. I believe in God, and God is with us. Those were his words. Israel's puppy dogs could take that and put it in their pipe and smoke it, because now they want Russia to leave Syria, so that Israel can now have a Syria which is in total submission to Israel. And so now, law must come from the truth. Law must be in submission to the truth. Governance must be based on truth. The state and the government must be in submission to truth which has come from Allah. That is a holy state. But in its place, we now have a secular state. And the secular state says goodbye to God. He is no longer in charge. We are now in charge. And that is kufr, and that is shirk. I want to proceed now very briefly, because I don't have the time to do more, to examine the holy state which was established in Jerusalem, because that is what Israel wants to replicate. That holy state had only one citizen, The only citizens of that state were Jews, Israelites. If you're not Israelite, you're not a citizen. So when Israel takes over the ruling state in the world once again will be divided into those who are Jews and those who are not. People will no longer be identified by their nationality, that we are British and American and so on. No, you are Gentile and we are Jews. That is the profile of the state coming. Number two, the holy state had no defined frontiers. No. The holy state could extend its frontiers as much as it wants. And so that is the state that is coming. And Israel, which should have no defined boundaries and frontiers. An Israel which can expand as much as it wants to expand. And the Torah says that holy Israel extends from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. And so Israel has to first ensure that this entire territory from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates, which includes Egypt and includes Iraq and all the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia and Syria, are all in submission to Israel. That's the master plan. And the holy state of Israel, of David and Solomon, used gold and silver as money. And so Israel tomorrow, when it establishes itself as a ruling state, will bring a monetary system to the world in which gold and silver will once again be legal tender. And then the ulama of Islam will stop eating their roti and chanai. You have to excuse my harsh language, please, because I have been a voice in the wilderness for too long, telling them that the money we are now using is bogus and fraudulent and haram, but they will not listen to me. So tomorrow they will clap their hands and say, yes, 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 this is Sunnah money, gold and silver. Today they are in silent mode. Tomorrow they will talk. I hope I don't live to see that shameful day when this ummah wakes up and says, yes, dinar and dirham is halal money. I hope I don't live to see that shameful day. Yes. So tomorrow gold and silver will be used as money. And who controls the gold in the world today? They do. And it was because Gaddafi called for all the Libyan gold to be returned to Libya. And he wanted to establish a monetary system for Africa based on gold. They got rid of Gaddafi. The same thing happened with Najmuddin al-Bakan in Turkey. But we don't have the time to deal with that. I have only a few minutes left. This is in a nutshell. I wish I could spend some more time with the definition of a holy state that Israel wants to establish as its master plan, but we're running out of time. Before I end, but there is another holy state, and I want Vladimir Putin to understand this. I hope Russia will understand this, that Allah sent a second model of a holy state. And it was not a state in which only the Jews are citizens. No. That was an exclusive model of a state. But this one established by Nabi Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, this caliphate, this Khilafah state, this holy state was different from that one in Jerusalem. This was a plural model of a state, in which the state was comprised of many different units, like Syria is comprised of many different minorities. And what our Prophet did, Allah's blessings be upon him, was to establish a holy state in which those who believed in Allah and who followed the truth which came from Allah constituted one unit of the state and did not impose themselves upon the rest of the state. They call that democracy. And we call it our model of a holy state. A plural model of a state in which the state recognizes that there is plurality in the polity, and all the units of the state relate with each other, listen carefully, on the basis of political equality. The non-Muslims in Malaysia will be so happy to hear that all the units of the state related with each other on the basis of political equality. But you had to first negotiate an agreement on the basis of which we would live together as a state. And that was called the Mithaq of Medina, or the agreement. They today call it a constitution. But it was an agreement which was arrived at not with a big constitutional conference under one roof. No, that was not the way. Our Prophet met with each tribe separately, and he took 7 months to negotiate with each tribe separately before he arrived at an agreement, a political agreement, on the basis of which the state could be established. And it was not a state in which we, the Muslims, imposed ourselves and our way of life and our law and our religion on those who were not Muslims. We did not do that. So there was no Islamic imperialism and no oppression. My time is up now. But what I have done is to explain, for those who did not know it, that our model of a Khilafah state, or a holy state, the second and the last in the world, the prophets, differed from the one in Jerusalem. The one in Jerusalem is the one that Israel wants to establish when Israel becomes the ruling state. That's the master plan. The one in Medina is the one our Prophet established. And when Nabi Isa alayhi salam, when Jesus returns, and when he establishes the holy state in Jerusalem, and Imam al-Mahdi establishes the holy state in Medina, in Mecca, these holy states will now be based on the second model of a plural state in a plural polity. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I have been blessed by God from the beginning with a beautiful mother. And my father, he was abused badly as a child, put into an orphanage at 4 years old, and abused in every way that you can imagine. I did not know this until a few years ago. But the damage was done. My father did not have the ability to love his only son, me. But my mother made up for that. She gave me the love and security that allowed me to push boundaries and feel and develop confidence. At this point, I have a supreme confidence. Whatever it is, I'm ready. I'll deal with whatever. I've been through a lot. It's only ever made me stronger in the end. But from the beginning, I didn't like bullies. I don't like bullies at all. And I'm the guy who was happy to have a nice little exchange with a bully. Let's go ahead and use these and figure out who's going to continue being a bully and who's going to learn not to be a bully. And I'm the guy that also stood up for the kids that were being bullied and said, you know, why don't you pick on somebody your own size? Why don't you pick on me? And I'm Irish, so the fighting spirit is in us. We've been through a lot. That's a genocide that's lost in the history for most 800 years of the British trying to exterminate us, wanting to steal our island. We have Algerian genocide. We don't really hear about the French, what they did there. We have genocides all over the place. Of course, we have one that the Sheikh mentioned in the creation of the so-called Soviet Union, a Christian genocide that was monstrous, absolutely monstrous. We don't hear about that one either. All we hear about is the one which any critical research will show you is a fairy story, an absolute fairy story. Truth for me is God, and while I did not grow up, like I was raised as a Catholic, my grandmother was born and raised in Ireland. She made sure that I did my first Holy Communion, my catechism, and to be honest, growing up in Southern California, the last thing I wanted to do was go pray in a church and all of that. It really was not something that I gravitated to at all. And in fact, later on, I started looking at the hypocrisy of the church. We don't, how many stories do we need of cardinals and bishops that are sexually abusing children, covered up by the highest level of the church? Never mind what they've done to the Irish. Countless children have been violated. So I was blessed in that I did not reject God. I rejected the church. And this was an important distinction. A lot of people in the West, where I've just come from, they've adopted the perspective, oh, it's hocus pocus, or, oh, that's so old school. They really see no value, and we see the direct correlation between a lack of spirituality and a lack of morality. It's Babylon, as the Sheikh said. I've got my kids and their mother in Babylon, and it was kind of hard to leave them, but I have to leave. I'm paying for genocide over there when I buy a coffee or whatever. This country, I'm not paying for genocide anymore, and that's important to me. And I have a heavy respect for the Malaysian leadership. I know it's not uniform. I know we have corruption everywhere. But in terms of Dr. Mahathir and the current Prime Minister and what he said recently at the United Nations, I wish we had something like that. We definitely don't. But it was truth that I revered, because when I was in the Marine Corps, I signed up as a U.S. Marine at 19 years old, and I became a machine gunner. So I carried a machine gun. I was in the infantry, and I was good. was really good at what I did. I was so good that I was put in a position that nobody with my time in service had. And it's, you know, in terms of fighting war, my job was a serious job. But as fate would have it, and I believed my country was the greatest, America, freedom, democracy, we're the greatest, rah, rah. I believed it. And I was doing well, and I was trying to pursue higher levels of training, reconnaissance, snipers, all this kind of stuff. It's really serious training. But as fate would have it, my leadership gave an order that was unlawful. And contrary to what many believe, we're not just supposed to follow orders. We are not. We have in the military something called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And within the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it says very clearly, if you are giving an unlawful order, your duty is to disobey that order. So if your leader tells you to kill prisoners or shoot into women and children, you're supposed to disobey the order. Now, it wasn't that extreme what the order was for me, but it was unlawful. It was an abuse of power. And the whole of the battalion, we were on a ship, basically just followed the order. But here I am. I'm the guy who's like, no, I did not sign up to just follow orders. I signed up for leadership by example, honor, integrity, the few, the proud, the Marines. I did not sign up to just follow orders and watch my command abuse their power. So I spoke out. This completely flipped my life, this decision. Totally flipped my life. I went from being the best Marine, clearly with a future, to being the most hated Marine by my platoon sergeant. And I can assure you, this is not like having a bad boss. When your platoon sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps Infantry decides he hates you, and it's going to make your life hell, make no mistake, he has the ability to do that. In truth, I was government property. We are literally government property. When you enlist, you become the property of the military/government. And I had 2 more years, and they did this, that, and the other to me. By the time I got out of the Marine Corps, that's still the happiest day of my life, by the way. When I drove out of the gate at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, for the last time, I was so happy, and I vowed I would never give up my freedom again. And I was wrong about the Marine Corps. Truth became God to me. So I studied voraciously. So it was only a matter of time before Palestine would call. Along the way, I learned many things. Along the way, I learned a lot of things. But eventually, Palestine called, and this was 21 years ago. My understanding of Palestine was certainly not what it is today. In fact, it was very minimal. But I learned enough to know. I have lived in Hawaii many years. There's a genocide being committed in Hawaii. You may remember there were fires in Maui last year. I was actually there. This is a genocide. They burn people alive. This is rich people wanting this coveted real estate. Mark Zuckerberg, Oprah Winfrey, and all this kind of stuff. They literally burn people alive. They turned off the water, and they're not even rebuilding it. So along the way, I saw the hypocrisy, and I've seen genocide. I made a film called The United States of Hypocrisy 25 years ago about the Hawaiian genocide. And I charged the U.S. government with it way back then. So they've been paying attention to me for a while, and they knew that I was a bit of a problem. And then 9/11 happened, and I was living in Hawaii, living a life that most would kill for, and I knew, like, I have to leave. No way can I stay in America, because I know this is a lie, what they're saying, and I'm looking at all of my American brothers and sisters believing this nonsense, blaming Muslims for a Jewish Mossad operation. there was no way I could stay. So I left, and much of the work that people know me for now comes from that. I have a phrase that I've been using, and it seems counterintuitive, seems horrendous even to say, but it's true. The positive side of genocide. For the first time, we really have had a real-time genocide played out in front of us. This is the first time that we've literally had access to social media and all the phones and the videos and all the things that we've seen. So those who wish to know the truth, you can find it. It's there. But the sheep and the cattle, as the Sheikh referred to it, oh, don't talk politics. They choose willful ignorance. God bless them. Good luck with that when you go meet your maker. So we've seen this genocide. Now, what's interesting about this is that it brings up a lot of bigger issues. How is it possible that this little state, this so-called Jewish state, wields uniform influence and power over all of our Western governments? Which one isn't? You'll find a few in Eastern Europe and whatnot that have some semblance of honor and whatnot, but pretty much the entirety of Western so-called society is lockstep in line, excusing. In fact, the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, boy, he's a piece of work. That guy literally said on record that when he was asked, does Israel have the right to shut off water, food, electricity, he replied by saying Israel has a right to defend itself, which is just another way of saying, yeah, they can treat the people they call animals like animals and cut them off. And yeah, my job as the Prime Minister, the head of state of the United Kingdom, is to verify Israel's right to do this. But it's not just the United Kingdom, is it? It's all of the Western powers, including my birth nation, most of all, supplying the 2,000-pound bombs. These are brutal truths that those of us who seek the truth have now been able to see real time. And it exposes not just the absolute inhumanity of the so-called Jewish state, but it also reveals that they have extraordinary control over our own so-called democratic representative governments. As far as I understand it, we're supposed to vote, and then you are supposed to represent the will of the people, and your job is to do that. So is the will of the people to continue to commit genocide, to bury children alive, to burn them alive? Is that the will of the people? No, but they're doing this. Why are they doing this? And this is what I love about the way that me and the Sheikh have come together, because Sheikh is coming at it from an eschatology, it's that perspective, it's pure Islam. And I'm coming at it from a very Western perspective, but we say very much the same thing on many levels. And for me, the big one, in fact, the reason why I'm here, aside from writing my books, because I've got a bunch of books in here now. I've been asked for years, have you ever written a book? I've always said no, and everybody always said you should. I now have what I need to have to be able to do what I need to do. But my number one task is to end usury. I despise usury. I want to call out the Muslims and the Christians of the world who continue to practice various forms of usury, and point out the fact that when you go and meet your maker, I don't believe there's going to be any excuse for you to say, oh, but yes, oh, but that. No, there is no interpretation of usury that allows for us to practice this. And I would argue, getting back to the Jewish state of Israel, who controls the banks? Who has all the gold? They do, based on their usury system. I don't have credit, by the way. I also don't have debt. I'm also poor by, Western standards and whatnot, but I don't have any debt. So in a way, I'm actually more wealthy than the rest of them. Whether it's your mortgage or your car payment or whatever the hell it is, with interest, which will compound, Now England is 7 trillion pounds in debt. Who do we owe that to? America now, I think it's $35 trillion in debt. Well, who do we owe that to? Maybe that's the ones who are in charge. Maybe that's the ones who are dictating the policy of America, of England, of Canada, of Australia. How are they doing it? The head of the snake. Money. Now, it all seems rather dire, but this gives me optimism. And I've said over and over anyway, whatever. I would rather die in the fight than sit by and be an observer to this monstrosity. And while I have children, even if I didn't have children, I'm still concerned for the children. And I recognize what I consider to be a basic tenet of manhood. We should be protecting all of the children. Instead, there's an epidemic of missing children and child sex slavery. Fact. Absolute fact. It shames us collectively, and thus I would rather die. Even if I can have my little piece of the pie and have my nice little place and go hang out on the beach and go surfing and, give my kids something lovely, I'm still concerned about the other kids. I'm still concerned about the people enslaved on a multitude of levels. And I feel blessed and honored to live in this time and to be able to stand up and face this monstrosity, call it out for what it is, and ultimately to fight it, either till death or victory, one or the other. The fact that I made it to 50 was kind of a shocker. Oh my God, I made it to half a century. This grip on power that they have is not as strong as we might think. And when you do simple math, Muslims and Christians, we comprise roughly 4 billion people on this planet. I just had a conversation with someone which I look forward to because usury is the issue, and I intend to be working with people, God bless all of you who work with me on this, to be able to expose many things. Somebody mentioned something beautiful within the Hindu religion, which also makes clear that usury is not acceptable. I really want to delve deep into these subjects and find out where our spiritual beliefs align. And this is a big part of the reason why me and the Sheikh are working together, because I feel the divine call to build the bridge between Christianity and Islam. While we have differences, these differences are not something that we should be playing into our enemy's hands and fighting each other over. We should be working together. We all pray to the same God at the end of the day. And while I may recognize Jesus Christ as something a little bit more than what Islam does, I'm not in any way interested in fighting over this. And at the end of the day, God will judge us and we'll find out, won't we? If I'm wrong, fine. I'm sure God's going to tell me. And if Islam is wrong, whatever. I look forward to this divine judgment. I'm not afraid of God. I love God. He is my only master. And He's been with me the whole way. I shouldn't even be alive on a multitude of levels. Even I was in Thailand 6 years ago and was poisoned and fell back, banged my head, was dead on the ground, spent 3 months in one of the worst prisons in the world for a 6-day visa overstay. God has been with me over and over and over again. And I reckon my job is not done yet. So really, I want to work with those of you who are serious about affecting and creating a better world. I'm not keen to listen to the problem and why we can't and this, that, and the other. I have no interest in this. I don't care what the odds are. I'm still going to stick with God. I'm going to fight the good fight, however long I'm able to do it. Where are we now? Getting back to Palestine and the master plan, Greater Israel. The Sheikh spoke about it. This is most definitely their plan. I have been shouting it for a long time. And in all honesty, they've done a pretty good job of doing what they've done to get to this point. But of course, They run my birth nation, and they couldn't have done it without all the weapons that my birth nation is supplying them. They couldn't. I look at my American brothers and sisters, and while many of them have woken up, I don't know if you may have seen, but before this genocide that has been real-time broadcast to the world, nobody really cared about Palestine, and that it wouldn't be a topic of conversation. And to be honest, they're more interested in cheap gas and going to the mall than any problems that might be occurring in Palestine. Aside from that, our best friend and ally is the Jewish state of Israel. So anything they tell us, we just repeat lockstep. But this genocide has changed the equation on the ground. However, I still see the American people as some of a special kind of stupid. I see Donald Trump coming in, and there's so many Americans believing that he's going to do this, that, and the other. There are some good things in terms of his relationship with Russia, but I know that Donald Trump is going to pick a big fight with Iran, that's him working for the Jewish state of Israel right there. So while we may get something half decent in terms of the relationship between the United States and Russia, they're going to go after the one state that is involved in a state of resistance. And having been to Iran several times, I have much admiration for it. Donald Trump is definitely not going to be saving America, and I'm very saddened by what I see of the American people. But at the same time, there is an extraordinary increase in awareness and focus on this. And what it's really done is, because of the extremity of the bodies buried under rubble, the drones targeting children, all of this stuff, because of that, it's really exposed the relationship with Israel. It's also exposed things like AIPAC, the American-Israeli Political Affairs Committee. It's the very thing that John F. Kennedy was going to register as a foreign agent, but he was dead within a few months. He also issued United States notes, silver-backed money, and he was dead within a few months. That's the last president we had. Yeah, he committed adultery and did a lot of things I don't agree with, but nonetheless, in terms of what he did for the American people, as far as policy, well, it's a death warrant. Everybody who touches the money at that level ends up dead. Virtually all of them. I won't even get into Germany and everything we've been told about that, but trust me, I have a lot of knowledge about that, and I would pose this question. Given the fact that it's a little different here, but you have BBC here. So, I mean, you watch the BBC. This is pure propaganda. So these narratives that were given by the BBC and Western media, it's really presented a problem now because of the duality, the hypocrisy, the inconsistency, how you say this, but we're looking at this over here. And that is the positive side of genocide. It really has become quite impossible to deny the fact that our governments, not this government, but our Western governments, are lockstep in line with the Jewish state of Israel. And instead of having representation that would respect the will of the people and protect the resources of the United Kingdom or America or Canada, to protect that wealth for the people, we are doing everything we can to facilitate this god-awful, nasty plan, which, getting back to what the Sheikh is saying, to me, this is a satanic agenda, and there's a lot of things being revealed in that too. Hollywood, as an example. For those that have any interest in it, there are so many things happening in Hollywood, which has been the main method of mind control. It was Hollywood who perpetuated the idea that America is the good guy. We haven't been the good guy. We weren't the good guy in World War II. We weren't. We were not. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, was that good? Firebombing of Dresden, whatever. But they, Hollywood, told us that we were, and they repeated that lie over and over. They also repeat the Holocaust narrative over and over. But we don't hear about these other genocides, do we? Hollywood is falling apart now. This is one of the main methods of mind control, which is now falling apart. We see exposure of this in the media and also in the music industry. The only way that any of this makes sense is getting back to what the Sheikh said, a holy state. But I would argue this holy state is a satanic state. And the temple they intend to build is one where they will do human and animal sacrifice again. And exactly why God cast them out in the first place. This is where we're going. But my question has always been, are they going to bring the whole world down with us? Because Germany, which is Western Israel, like my country, America, that's Western Israel. Germany is definitely Western Israel. They've gifted Israel with Dolphin-class submarines that can deliver the nuclear weapons to any target around the world. But I don't underestimate God's ability to take that when they launch, if they launch, and say, no, God could take it out of the sky. But we'll see. Will they bring the whole world down with them? This system is being exposed. And my task is to try and present solutions. And that's why I'm going to be writing. But usury is the big one. That's the big one. And it's something that none of us can disagree with if we truly are godly people. Because there is no room to agree with usury, and we should be rejecting it everywhere. Everywhere. So I believe that I have spoken enough on this, and I appreciate very much all of you. I hope to be a good guest in your country, and I wish to learn your culture and show my respect and perhaps speak about it, and but do so as a guest. This is not my country. This is your country. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin, for your inspiring speech. And the fact is that he has experienced, especially the journey here, yes. And also, I'm not sure how many of you are following the Irish and American track. I'm not sure how many of you follow this But I will start with a question before for Mr. Gabriel. That America and morality has got they are oxymoron. Do you agree with that? America and morality.
Yes.
Oxymoron. Do you agree?
American morality, what's...
Oxymoron.
Yeah. I mean, there is morality, there is. And some places more than others, you kind of have to get out of the cities and whatnot.
Yeah, but the way the American military has conducted itself in Afghanistan, in Iraq, a lot of innocent lives have been slaughtered with no regret. No regret.
No, karma is a principle. Karma, like what comes around goes around. I'm a firm believer in this. I've experienced it in my life. The debt that America owes is so gargantuan. I don't hold out a lot of hope for it. And of course, as the Sheikh discussed, the agenda is to destroy the American empire and then usher in the new Jewish state as the ruler of the world. That's their plan.
And what surprises me is the Jewish control over the entire Western leadership. And this is amazing. They are doing things against their own conscience, doing very well. And it's alarming that, people can stoop that low to follow the dictates of, an unjust system. And this is very, very unfortunate, because that's tarnished the entire Western civilization, which I feel that it is not suitable for us.
Absolutely, and I do have a question here, which sort of ties into that. Do you agree that Israel have total control of the world economy? Not absolute, but, you know, definitely they have disproportionate. That's another one. There's another interesting fact. The Jewish people are 0.2% of the human population. Talk about disproportionate amount of control. Whoa, you know, 0.2%? You got to give them credit, I have to say. I mean, you know, however they're doing it, how is it possible that they can get all the rest of us to somehow submit to their system wittingly or unwittingly? It's pretty amazing. They do have nearly, there are obviously, we have BRICS and we have potentially competing things. The jury's still out on that for me to a certain degree. But in terms of trade and commerce and banking and finance, they have a massively disproportionate amount of control for sure. I would argue, if you want to learn about something, and it's going to be the basis of the books that I'm going to write, there's a book called A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind. And it is a book that will show, and I've discussed this with some here already, the direct correlation between nations that do not have usury, where, like in Europe, literally, like in England, the Jews were not allowed to come in, period, because they were known to use, to conduct usury, and there was a policy. No way. But it took a corrupt king getting cozy with the usurers, and we see this. If you look at history, England, to what it is today, is not what it's always been. It actually used to be quite a noble country with a lot of amazing things, including Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, and literally common law. These are beautiful things, really. I mean, absolutely fantastic. But we see a direct correlation between usury, when the usurers get their bloody mitts on the government, we see a direct correlation to war and poverty. Literally. It's a direct correlation. I look forward to developing that in a way that is so compelling that it will prove that this one thing, just this one thing, and by the way, those of us whose religion doesn't allow this one thing, we outnumber them by a massive number. A massive number. And that doesn't even count our allies in the Hindu religion or other religions who also recognize usury as not acceptable. So in that sense, why wouldn't we be hugely optimistic if we only get on the same page, which this is not a complex issue? And how many surahs and how many Bible verses and how many experiences, how many truths do we need to support our argument? We've got more than enough. More than enough. So, A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind, I highly recommend that book. I'd like to get that book printed out here. They try and hide these books. They don't want you to know this stuff. They want you to think that the world has always been this way, and it's not true. We've had golden ages. We've had Atlantis. We've had periods that were amazing. In fact, in England, the average work week was 14 hours a week. That's how they built these magnificent buildings and infrastructure and whatnot. Because people who are industrious and who have a healthy demeanor, if you're not working, you're not sitting there on the couch and watching telly, you want to do something more. You want to be a contributor to something that goes beyond, a legacy, to leave a legacy to your kids and the future generations. This is what we could have again, if only we know the truth.
I think, any other questions you have? I think we have questions with all of the...
Okay, I have a question, and here's a question in my camp.
Yes, brother, the last one. Yes. Please introduce yourself.